William Stanaforth, a scientist and astronaut, embarks on a pioneering mission to Mars. Over the course of 270 days, he must conduct a series of experiments while also maintaining his sanity, as isolation in deep space can have unpredictable consequences. Day by day, he gets closer to his destination, feeling an irresistible pull toward the red planet as if he can hear its call. Mars is just a tiny speck in the vast cosmos. There is neither life nor death there. But one man from Earth, Captain William D. Stanaforth, has decided to bring the planet to life. On Earth, preparations are underway for the first human mission to Mars in history. The first ship, Zephyr, is launched with Captain Stanaforth as its sole crew member. A few days later, a second ship follows, piloted by Captain Emily Maddox. The entire journey to the red planet is expected to take 270 days. On the eve of departure, Stanaforth bids farewell to Earth, where 6 billion people are left wondering, why is he doing this? Why sacrifice his life for a barren planet? But the captain is certain he is going to Mars to bring life to it. And then, liftoff. From orbit, Stanaforth gazes at Earth, unable to stop admiring its beauty. Everything proceeds as planned, and after confirming this, the Central Control Center in Houston authorizes him to remove his spacesuit and begin his daily tasks. A joyful crowd gathered to see off the first man who wishes to become a Martian greets him over the communication channel. The mission is overseen by Maddox Skinner, whom the astronaut simply calls Skinny. The two men seem to be close friends. Skinny suggests starting the flight with a check of the reactor, an invention of Stanaforth himself. This device extracts hydrogen and oxygen from the soil and recombines them into potable water. Thanks to this, Stanaforth will be able to produce the essential liquid for himself and his plants, both in flight and on Mars, an achievement of tremendous significance. Later, Stanaforth prepares his first space meal and tends to the plants he will be growing throughout the mission. Then he records his thoughts in a special onboard journal. That night, he struggles to sleep. He cycles through various soundscapes, bird song, ocean waves, but nothing helps. The excitement is too overwhelming. In the morning, Skinny calls him. It's time for the weekly student briefing. Stanaforth talks about the mission's preparation. Almost everything had been meticulously planned: food supplies, equipment, and all essential items for the expedition. But the biggest challenge was securing a water source. That's why he invented the reactor, which runs on dirt. Stanaforth devised a process to extract hydrogen and oxygen from the soil, which when combined produces water. He had tested his reactor in the Atacama Desert on Earth. During the first 2 days, he had to work out the flaws, enduring a parched throat. Only on the third day did he finally manage to extract water. Only after this success was the mission deemed feasible. If it worked on Earth, it should work on Mars. He leaves Earth, but all of humanity remains with him in spirit. This instills confidence that mankind has surpassed itself and reached new heights. On his journey to Mars, Stanaforth remains optimistic. He waters his plants, extracts water from the reactor, exercises, reads, writes in his journal, and even dances. Skinny is always in touch, updating him on Earth's news. Stanaforth feels in control, which means everything will be fine. He recalls how, during his reactor trials, Skinny found him in the desert, and at that moment, Stanaforth had assured his friend that in just a few years, humans would live on Mars. Now he communicates with those eager to follow in his footsteps, listening to their proposals for establishing life on the red planet. At a certain point in his journey, Stanaforth must stop at a space station, where a prepared supply package awaits him. The astronauts there will also be the last humans he sees for a long time. But upon arrival, after presenting them with a small gift of fresh fruit, he notices something unsettling. Both crew members appear emotionally drained from their extended stay in space and their failed experiment. All the plants and animals they had taken with them into orbit have perished. The astronauts are deeply disheartened by this failure, as it renders their time on the station meaningless. Moreover, they desperately miss their families. Suddenly, one of them suggests that Stanaforth should abandon his mission while there's still time, unable to understand how someone could leave Earth for so long, or perhaps forever. At that moment, a message arrives announcing the launch of Stanaforth's successor, Maddox. Realizing he won't abandon his mission, the astronauts watch him with tears in their eyes. Then, one of them pleads with Stanaforth not to do something he doesn't fully understand. Captain Stanaforth returns to Zephyr, but the conversation lingers in his mind. He recalls how his ex-wife received a prestigious literary award. She had shared her excitement and joy with others, grateful that people recognized the importance of her work, while he simply watched from a distance before walking away. That night, the moon was impossibly large in the sky. He stared at it for a long time and suddenly felt utterly alone. He went back to the hall where people were celebrating, but he didn't want to join them. Instead, he observed from afar, feeling detached. Now in space, he feels the same way. Sometime later, a minor issue arises in the reactor, but Stanaforth is confident he can handle it. In fact, he is almost glad for the unexpected challenge. It breaks the monotony of his routine. Despite the terrifying speed of the spacecraft, he feels nothing. Everything seems to be standing still, unchanged. Soon he notices the first traces of contamination, particles from the decay of plants and his own skin. Memories of the astronauts on the space station return to him, and he begins to understand their pessimism. Still, he remains convinced that he will overcome any difficulties. But one day, the reactor experiences a more serious malfunction. Stanaforth remembers the desert, the thirst, the struggle. Anxiety starts creeping in, and he confides his concerns to the ship's AI. Later, he receives birthday messages from loved ones on Earth. To keep his mind occupied, he starts learning foreign languages. Stanaforth continues his experiments with plants when, suddenly, communication with Houston is lost. The abrupt silence sends him into a panic. But when Skinny finally comes back online, he explains that they had to shift all attention to Stanaforth's successor, Maddox, whose ship experienced gyroscope failures, causing her to veer off course. Stanaforth jumps into action, guiding Maddox through the necessary adjustments, despite Skinny's protests that ground technicians should handle it. The days pass, each one identical to the last. Then one day, Stanaforth thinks he has lost his sense of smell. He sprays various scents and feels relieved when he can still detect the aroma of grass. That night, he once again cycles through the ambient sounds of Earth, and suddenly he realizes he is beginning to miss home. Now he can feel space seeping into the ship with his entire being. Solar flares, invisible from Earth, appear with increasing frequency, disturbing his thoughts. On day 81 of the mission, a critical issue arises. A short circuit in the reactor contaminates the supply of drinking water. However, Stanaforth does not report the incident to Earth, knowing that doing so would mean an immediate recall. He remembers his struggle to extract water from the desert soil and attempts to recreate the process in space. One day, Skinny calls him, clearly worried. He pleads with Stanaforth to leave the reactor alone because the engineers on Earth are concerned about its readings. But the astronaut is relentless in his efforts to restore the device, which leads to yet another failure. This time, part of the reactor burns out. The next day, Skinny delivers devastating news. After several weeks in flight, Maddox's mission has been terminated due to critical malfunctions, and she is now returning to Earth. Skinny suspects that Stanaforth is also struggling, but Stanaforth insists that everything is under control and asks his friend not to worry. In truth, Stanaforth finds himself increasingly consumed by thoughts of the infinite void surrounding his ship. His plants, deprived of sufficient water, begin to wither. He collects every last drop of liquid that might help him survive and recalls the condensation trick that had saved him in the desert. He constructs makeshift collection boxes, using plants to replicate natural water cycles. His plan is to compact and heat the soil, extracting hydrogen and oxygen, just as the universe once formed water, leading to life on Earth. Now he is simply trying to repeat the process. Day 161. Stanaforth confirms that he can produce just enough water to survive the journey. But if he cannot restart the reactor on Mars, his mission will be pointless. It will end in death and, ultimately, the failure of everything he has worked for. Skinner finally realizes that Zephyr is facing real problems. Stanaforth is forced to admit to the mission director that his reactor has failed and that he is unable to repair it. Skinny gives him one final day to try to fix the reactor. After that, the ship will be forcibly redirected back to Earth. Stanaforth is devastated. He has spent years preparing for this mission. He remembers the first time he drank water extracted from the soil. In that moment, he had felt a deep connection with the universe. That was when he knew he was destined to go to Mars, and now he has to abandon everything. In the morning, Skinny comes online and issues a direct order. Put on the spacesuit and move to the cockpit because Houston is about to initiate Zephyr's return. The fuel has already been sent to the station, ensuring he has enough to make it back home. Stanaforth understands that the mission has failed, but he also knows he cannot return. It no longer matters to him that the reactor isn't working. After all, there will be no one else on Mars. He is risking only himself. Taking control of the ship, he cuts off communication with Earth. Skinny warns him that without Houston's guidance, he will drift off course and perish in space. But Stanaforth refuses to listen. The days of complete solitude begin. He records his thoughts, hoping that one day someone will read them. He has no idea if Zephyr is on the correct trajectory. If he miscalculated, he will simply fly past Mars, lost in space forever. He has lost hope for the mission, but continues his routine, rationing at sips of precious water. He constantly checks his senses, fearing that he is losing his hearing or sense of smell. Guilt gnaws at him. He has failed humanity. Stanaforth is broken, empty. He prepares for death. One day, the thought crosses his mind to open the airlock and step outside, surrendering himself to space. But then faint fragments of transmissions from Skinny reach him. His friend is pleading for any kind of response. The world is still hoping he is alive. And suddenly, Stanaforth remembers the desert again, just as his ship is caught in a storm. He watches in awe as objects shift around him, and at that moment, he understands why he is here. After months of travel, Zephyr finally reaches Mars. Stanaforth moves to the cockpit and sends a message to Houston, reporting his readiness for landing. The astronaut follows all necessary procedures and successfully touches down on the surface of the red planet. Captain Stanaforth reports his safe arrival to Houston. Then he steps out of the ship and takes in the lifeless landscape. There is no life here, but there is no death either. Perhaps he can survive. The story leaves us with an ambiguous conclusion. Life is unpredictable. Space is a force of nature, and like any force of nature on Earth, it is not kind to humans. To travel to another planet, one does not need only strength and courage, but also intelligence, skills, and a mind built to withstand the unknown.